Oh dear, this is not entirely original now, is it? I suppose I better let him out. Oh, sorry, I'm just playing a wee bit of Tomb Raider 2 on my Pentium II 400 MHz computer, also known as the Loch Ness Machine. Hey everyone, the Flying Scotsman here, and welcome to this video. Now, as you've been able to see here, I'm actually able to enjoy playing Tomb Raider 2 kind of as it was meant to be played on era-appropriate hardware. This system has a Slot 1 motherboard with a Pentium II processor and 128 megs of RAM, which is probably a bit much for the time, but no matter. What it does have, which is definitely too much for the time, is a Voodoo 3000 graphics card on the AGP bus. Well, it's actually a card installed into the AGP slot on the motherboard, but no matter. And even though the card itself is a wee bit nearer than the system, the whole system itself is in that kind of late 90s period. So, I mean, the processor is, you know, one of the second fastest second highest clocked Pentium 2 that Intel made, and the graphics card, well, that came out in 1999, so yeah, it's about kind of 98, 99 kind of a build. And as you can see, it's playing Tomb Raider really quite nicely. Now, 10 years ago, well, it's coming up to 10 years ago, when I started actually collecting retro computers, a system of this kind of spec could have been had very cheaply, if not very free. Indeed, I was able to obtain the Abstalgia PC, which is a very similar spec to this. That was a Pentium III 500 with a TNT2. I was originally trying to do that for charity, but I was able to get that machine and others like it, and quite a few others like it, for free. But unfortunately, as far as Pentium 2s, Pentium 3s are concerned, those days are long gone. I can't imagine if I bought or if I was given this board and CPU by Billy. In fact, I bought it from him. Very cheap price. He sent it to me from America, and my Flying Scots machine, well, some of that had to come over from Germany, actually. The board, the Asus CUSL2 board that I got for that, actually did have to come over from Germany. Pentium 3 that I got for it, the 933 MHz Pentium 3, can't remember where I got that from. I think I might have bought that though. That wasn't too bad, but yeah, you can get the point. I mean, I've got that all in 2016. Got this built in, I think, 2018. Originally, it was in a different case. It was in a newer case. Now, of course, it's in a beige desktop case, and the whole thing is topped off with a sound card that is actually way too new for the system. It's topped off with an Audigy sound card, but that sound card has brilliant Sound Blaster compatibility. Now, if you want to buy a system or build a system like this, if you live in America, you probably still can. However, if you live in the UK, unless you have lots and lots of money, you're probably going to be left wanting unless someone with a Pentium II system who doesn't know what it's worth lets you have it for either, if not a very good price, then free. And you know, that is going to leave a lot of people, as well as people who don't have the space to set up a big desktop. Now, that's going to leave a lot of people wondering, if I want to play games like this, how do I do it? Well, one way to do it would be to use GOG.com, that tend to have a lot of the old games that we loved and enjoyed available for download. I mean, you can buy them, and you know, you can run them on your modern computer, and they do run quite well. I mean, I have a few GOG games myself. You know, I tended to run them on my laptop while I've been away. But I mean, what if you've got an obscure game that maybe is not available on GOG.com? What then? Well, luckily there have been solutions. Back in the past, you would run something like Virtual PC. That could help run a few games. Unfortunately, that's... Well, I mean, that was a bit glitchy when it was around, and now is basically non-existent. You can't use it anymore. Hyper-V, as well as various updates to Windows, has made it so that you really can't run Virtual PC anymore. And to be honest, even I'll admit that it's not the best in the world now. DOSBox will let you run a lot of MS-DOS games, but you know, what if you're running games from the Windows 98 era? You know, some of which may have 3DFX. What if you wanted to run games that just, you know, whose manufacturers aren't, you know, around anymore? Just games that have been forgotten to the sands of time. You know, there's a lot of games like that. Well, there is a solution. For a few years now, we've had a program called PCem, and that has let you emulate anything from the original IBM 5150 all the way up to some Super Socket 7 systems. Well, now we're able to emulate more than that. As the Nostalgia Mall has shown us, you can quite ably emulate a Packard Bell Legend 406 CD, or anything that ran on the Hillary board. But more than that, since the newest release of PCem, which came out a few months ago, you've been able to emulate not only Pentium Pros, but now Pentium IIs are emulatable by PCem, along with a few newer graphics cards, including the Voodoo 3000. I think you can see where this is going. Essentially, what that means is that I can sort of emulate this machine here on that. So, how does it do? Well, I'm going to be honest. When I was on my Haswell system, I did notice that if I tried emulating anything above a Pentium 166 MMX, I would get stuttery sound. But I now have a Ryzen 5 3600, so that does actually emulate this system quite well, because I have actually tested it. But just how well can I really emulate this system? Well, you've seen me playing Tomb Raider 2 on actual hardware. I've played quite a few games on this on actual hardware. I've played Theme Park World, I've played Grand Theft Auto. But I guess we should do it in a more quantifiable way. And unfortunately, guys, that means I'm going to have to pull out and benchmark. So, thanks to the magic of video editing, we have performance test from Passmark version 3.5 evaluation version. This is a 30-day trial, but that's all we need. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to run a benchmark test on this particular system. Now, benchmarks can only tell us part of the story, and actually, to be honest, I do have a couple of concerns that could corrupt the results. If I'm going to do this scientifically, then I really need to talk about the limitations of what I'm doing. Firstly, the hard disk is tested as part of the benchmark. That's absolutely fine, but the hard disk in here is actually quite old and quite slow. And while the hard disk on the emulated machine is also emulated, I would wager that it could go quite a lot quicker. In fact, it does tend to do that. So that could corrupt the results. Also, if there are any pauses or anything in the benchmark, I have to wonder, will that pause the whole thing and the benchmark software won't know that it's been paused or is stuttering? Or will it actually recognize that based upon the amount of time something can take? And actually, will that be reflected in the score in that way? Now, these are things that I really don't know. And also, you may remember me saying I can mostly emulate this computer. Well, I can. Now, while this actual machine has a Creative Labs Sound Blaster Audigy installed, along with the Creative Live Drive, the emulated machine has to make do with a Creative Labs Audio PCI 128, because the Audigy is not available for emulation within PCem version 17. So that's where the almost comes in. Also, the motherboard. This is an Intel motherboard, I forget the model number, but it does not have the same BIOS. Well, it's not the same board that's been emulated in the virtual machine. Now, you would think that one slot, one board is as good as another and what have you, and it really should be, because I believe that they both have Intel 440BX chipsets in them. In fact, I believe the board is an SE440BX2 in this system. But again, you know, some motherboards are just better than others anyway. You know, I don't really know much about the emulated board, and, you know, I have to wonder, I do have to wonder, you know, how well the this would actually stack up against a real version of that motherboard. I will say as well that the sound card isn't obviously tested. How much of a difference it would make, not entirely sure. I don't think it would make too much of a difference. And actually, you know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I believe that the Audigy is overkill for this system. But, you know, I had it lying around with the live drive, so I thought, you know, I wanted it to go into something. Pentium 3 would have been a nice idea, except that's in a black case. So it went in here instead. Anyway, we have a score. It is 61.7, and the CPU's made 118.2 megaflops. So, let's go now and have a look at the emulated machine. So here we are booting into the emulated computer. It is actually using a Gigabyte board as this machine, with an award BIOS. So I'm just going to log in. Now the sound does stutter a bit on startup, but for the most part it does seem to work quite well. I've played some Tomb Raider on this emulated machine, and with the exception of a few utilities and programs and other bits and pieces, I do mainly have a similar system running on here. So this is the same 3DFX Voodoo 3000 that's on here with 16 megs of video RAM, just like the one in my Flying Scots machine. And it is a Pentium II 400 with 128 megs of RAM. And the sound card, is an SB PCI, Audio PCI 128. Very similar, if not the same as what's emulated, well, very similar, at least, to the card that's emulated in VMware, actually, is this one. Okay, what I have done is exited out of at least one extraneous utility that really shouldn't be there. The rest of them, there to kind of do with the hardware that's in the machine, or at least emulated. So I will leave those on. The offending program was actually a system tray quick launcher for the M&M browser. I would love to show you that actually, but unfortunately, it does contain clips of his music. So yeah, that would put me on the wrong footing with the copyright mafia. So, anyway, let's open up Performance Test. Again, it's the same version, the free trial. And let's go now and test this system. Okay, so this is the... oh my, it's kind of stuttering a wee bit there, is it? Right, okay, this is the number from this machine. So, here are the results. So, on the left here, you have the emulated passmark, and on the right, you have the real hardware passmark. And, well, the results are actually quite interesting. So the passmark, the overall rating for this computer, the real hardware is 61.7. The emulated hardware, though, is 65.1. That is quite interesting. So it's actually better, and I'm guessing this the passmark rating is actually a better overall, as a more rounded score, because the megaflops for the machine, which I'm believing would be entirely incumbent upon the processor, is actually better on the actual build, on the actual Loch Ness Machine build, than it is on the emulated build, and that I would say is well out with the margin of error. In fact, I would say that the real machine is a third faster in terms of megaflops than what the emulated machine is. And that is all very well and good. I mean, it's I don't know, for me, I would say that well, for me, I'm not sure what it says. All I know is that, I mean, I can actually run this machine quite nicely in emulation. I think, though, what I really need to do is have this machine set up on the Haswell machine under Windows and get a result. So I think that is what I will do. So I have now run the pass mark test on the Haswell. However, when testing the other two machines, I did notice that I'd left some things running on both of them. And the caliber of things left running on both of them is actually different, because I use the emulated machine for different things to what I use the real machine for. So there's different things loaded up in the system tray. So I decided to retest everything, have as little as running as possible, and while I was testing everything, I also decided to run some 3D Mark 99 tests. So let's have a look at what we found. So, in terms of the Passmark Performance Test 3.5 scores, the emulated machine on the emulated Haswell actually seemed to do slightly better, believe it or not, than the Ryzen. Although that was only very, very marginal. The actual Passmark score, the Ryzen was 59.9, the Haswell was 60.0. Now, one might argue that is well within the margin of error. That said, the Megaflop score, I think it was about, it was a wee bit more. Anyway, so that is something. Obviously, the real hardware, much higher Megaflop score, only slightly higher score. Now, for these tests, so yeah, those were the first lot of scores, and yeah, that's we'll just ignore that, shall we? Because I had a whole bunch of stuff running, but yeah, I mean that's something I found out. I know benchmarks don't make for an interesting video, but I mean this, doing this, it's actually, I set out to see, whether it's feasible to run a Pentium 2 in PCem, and I found these results, and the Haswell performing better than the Ryzen. While that may be the case in Passmark Performance Test 8, I will say, and again, it could be down to the actual makeup of the Haswell machine, the hard drive that's in there. I'm using a, now what am I using? I think I'm using a Hitachi, no, I'm not, I'm using a, Jings, what am I using? I don't know. Anyway, I'm using a second-hand 2TB drive in that machine. That drive, it's good. It's, I did look at the smart data on it when I installed it. It does seem to be okay. No, it's a 4TB. Sorry, it's not a 2. It's a blooming 4. I'm losing my heat. A 4TB hard drive. It's good, but I'm also using a 6TB hard drive, which I think is newer in this Ryzen system. So what I was away to say was, I did find when I was running these benchmarks, I would start the benchmarks off on the Haswell first before I started on the Ryzen system, my main system, and my main system would finish them before. Now, for two systems that are supposed to be emulating exactly the same computer, I mean, I literally just took my PCem folder, copied it over to my server, copied it back onto the Haswell machine, and just went with that. I didn't even change the network name, which is normally a big no-no in networking, having two computers that are identified by the same name. Yeah, my network must wonder what the hell I'm doing. I basically got the exact same computer twice. And yet I'm getting two different scores, you know, and every time I ran the benchmarks, I was getting different scores. You know, some of it would be margin of error, but yeah, not only that, but I mean the performance was different. So, I mean, while the sound stuttering's not as bad as I expected on the Pentium II, it, you know, certainly exiting out of the M&M browser, well, certainly exiting out of the system tray launcher for the M&M browser causes it to play a couple of bars of the Real Slim Shady, and that seemed to play through fine on the Haswell without stuttering. Shutting down the machine, however, or rebooting, did cause the shutdown sound to stutter on that machine, whereas it didn't on the Ryzen system. And like I said as well, the benchmarks, both Passmark and 3D Mark, they actually, the graphics actually ran quicker on the Ryzen, and the, you know, on both Passmark and 3D Mark, and everything else ran quicker as well. I think the biggest hurdle that the Haswell had to get over was the hard disk read and write test. So, I mean, I would think that the I/O is the same on both the Ryzen board and the Haswell board, but I mean, I guess it's like part of the emulation. So, I mean, you're not actually on bare metal at this point. You're emulating an IDE controller. So, I think we've talked way too much about benchmark numbers. So, I think it's time we actually played a game, because this is what most people would be doing with a setup like this. So we've got Tomb Raider 2, this is 3D accelerated, doesn't seem to use glide. Whoops! I've never been able to do this course properly. Let's see if I can do it now. It is a wee bit juddery, but it's not unplayable. I'm going to be honest, it isn't. To be honest, though, I think I found it more playable on the old drivers. So again, I think I would like to experiment with the older 3DFX drivers. I'm sure there's other people like yelling at the computers going, "Of course those drivers are terrible! Jay, fit you Dan!" Of course, my younger self would have been like, "Oh, I'd like the idea of having a whole bunch of tools to play about with in the start menu." Oh, that is so unfair! You stupid. This, also, I'm pretty certain that this game is whoever wrote the original Tomb Raider, I'm pretty sure they looked into the future and they saw my friend Izzy, my Alaskan friend, because, yeah, it's her. This is her. Like, you know, oh, jinx. You know, gone about exploring, finding artifacts, you know, I mean, she did a degree in archaeology, wearing a brown pleat, or braid as you Americans call it, or plait as you English call it. Honestly. So this is definitely very playable. Up you get, Lara. Way! I failed. Let's cheat some more. Why not? Nice one. Oops. There's only one issue with this whole Lara is Izzy thing. Izzy's not English, and Lara very much is. Hello, my name is Lara Croft. I have a plait. Oh dear, it seems to be very cold. I'm not gonna badmouth there. Lara Croft, because I get the feeling I would be murdered literally to death by Poppy Pink Plaid, aka Holly Pritchard. Also, have you read her books? They're really good. I'm not being paid to say that. Come on. Oh my word. I thought I was going to go to my watery grave. Hello. Oh, a wee stutter of sound there. He was like, Ugh. Brilliant finale to the course. Aerial runway. Oh yes, zip wire. Yes, yes, rather. That Boris Johnson tried to bring blooming zip wires for all of us. Seriously. So, yep, we're in Lara's mansion. I'm not gonna put the old butler in the freezer because we did that at the start of the video. So, yeah, it looks like we have ended up where we started, playing some Tomb Raider 2, and yes, this is running very satisfactorily. You know, if you needed to. Actually, you know what? I think you can run this on modern versions of Windows. So this was maybe a bad example of a game to actually, you know, run, use a virtual machine to run. But still, I mean, you know, some people will like the whole the GOG way of doing things. You know, just run it like you would any game on a modern computer. At the moment, I'm still enjoying the idea of running it from within you know, an era-appropriate operating system. You know, I think it's quite novel. But you know, I mean, it's horses for courses. I mean, most people just want to play the game rather than try and get the game going, and things like GLG can, you know, enable that to happen. But going back to emulating, well, let's go and talk about that. So, would I recommend that you get rid of your Pentium 2s and older machines and start emulating them? PCem's good enough to do so, right? Even on Haswell, it seems to run pretty well. I mean, we've seen the numbers. They might not be as good as the real hardware, but still, they should be good enough, right? You've seen me play the games on the Ryzen system, and if the numbers comparing the Ryzen and the Haswell system are anything to go by, I should just be able to junk the Pentium 2, right? No. Well, look, if you have the hardware already, then I would still recommend using the hardware, because, I mean, like I've said before, this computer, I could add exactly the sound card I wanted. I mean, again, parts, just, you know, sound cards like other parts, they are becoming more rare, so the chances of you actually being able to find an appropriate sound card, you know, that is a bit, that is getting a bit more difficult to do. But, you know, again, if you have them, or if you can get hold of them, then yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. You can add in your own expansion cards if you've got interesting cards and interesting peripherals that you want to play about with that will only work on older computers. That's something I've not actually talked about at all in this video. Interesting peripherals. You know, if you've got things like that. I mean, I've got well, my parents have, and I will have once I'm able to go and see them, you know, hopefully when things get a wee bit back to normal. I'll have an old Kodak photo scanner. I used to use it with the Presario 2240. Now, that thing only worked with Windows 95 and 98. So if I wanted to use that, and I wanted to be running Windows 2000, I actually had to dual boot just so that I could use that photo scanner. So you can imagine if I needed to dual boot back in 2002 for a piece of hardware bought in 1998, then yeah, imagine that now. Do you need to run this interesting hardware? Well, probably not. I mean, you can get photo scanners nowadays that are going to be a lot better than anything that Kodak could have pulled off. But, you know, I mean, if you have things like old PDAs that you want to mess about with, again, some of them you can get the software, some of them you can get third-party software written for newer versions of whichever operating system. Sometimes, though, it's just nice to be able to play with them on your original hardware. And obviously, you know, adding cards that aren't emulated by PCem, you know, you're just not going to be able to get to work at all. If, however, you would like to play some old games, you'd like to play about with an old version of Windows, but you don't want to invest the time, the money, the space, or what have you in getting these systems, or you can't afford, or you don't have the space, whatever reason, you know, if you don't have any of these systems, you'd like to start using them, I would say go for it. You know, I don't think you'll have anything to lose by using PCem. And actually, as you get older and older and older, I mean, these machines actually will become easier to emulate. You know, if you go from a Pentium 2 to a Pentium 1 to a 486 to 386 to 86, what have you. All of which can be emulated by PCem. You know, I would say that sometimes it's not a bad idea to emulate, you know. I mean, the oldest system I have is a 286 laptop. Well, I mean, I've got a Commodore 64 at the office, but I mean, if we're talking about x86 compatible, then yeah, the oldest system I have is a Toshiba T3100E. The oldest system I've ever had was a Compact Portable 2, which had a 286 and a CGA display. And the Toshiba seems to work absolutely fine. How long that will continue to work, I could not say. The Compact didn't, and I did not have the expertise or access to the expertise to repair what was wrong. It needed, the hard drive needed to, well, either be diagnosed or what have you. I mean, I could have probably done that. Or probably could have added in an XDID card or something. The CRT, that was a wee bit broken, so I couldn't get that sorted. I did have someone take a look at it. They didn't really know what they were doing either. So, I mean, a CRT is not something you want to mess about with if you don't know what you're doing. Extremely high voltage. You could be killed to death. I'm not even, well, I'm not even joking. I mean, there's people who even know what they're doing that have been bit by CRTs. You know, John's Arcade, he ended up going halfway across the room while messing about. Well, not going to say messing about, but working on a CRT. So yeah, a lot of high voltage in those, very dangerous. So yeah, that's the thing. But I mean, more than just that, you know, with old computers, you've got, you know, I mean, parts are becoming more rare. You know, things are wearing out. You know, fixes that are needed to keep them going are becoming more and more complicated. I mean, if you have, and you know, and obviously things are becoming more expensive as well. I mean, we're not just kind of looking at boxed examples now. We're looking at, you know, something found in the attic. I mean, you've got scalpers that, you know, are thinking just because something is old, it's worth something, and that's kind of driven the prices up. Because you get a lot of, you know, brick and mortar stores in America, like, you know, a lot of thrift stores, they will use eBay, which tends to, you know, whose users tend to overinflate their prices as a guide for what they should charge for these things. So, I mean, the barrier to, and that's in America, so, you know, you can imagine in the UK where everything's a lot more rare, the barrier to entry is a lot higher. I quite like the way that PCem is working now. I think it's a lot better. You can have multiple configurations, you know, and I think it's getting better and better with age. So, you know, if it's an old 1980s, early 90s system that you're wanting to emulate, you can't get hold of the actual hardware. I mean, if you can get hold of the actual hardware and you have the know-how to fix it, you're able to do it, you're able to get it going, then by all means, I would say get the hardware every time. I would, you know, I enjoy the hardware aspect of it. But if you're just wanting to dip your toes in the water, if you're just wanting to play some old games or mess about with some old software, you know, without becoming too invested, then I see absolutely nothing wrong with PCem. And I can't believe I'm saying that because, you know, I've always been, you know, I've got to have the real hardware. But no, that's it. So anyway, I've blethered on for way too long. So I will stop now. So I'd like to thank you all for watching this video, and please join me for my next one. Cheery bye. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. You could also subscribe to the channel and hit the wee bell icon to be notified when I have published a new video. But until then, please feel free to check out some of my previous videos.